So hello, everyone. Welcome aboard Claire and Tony from Wilderness Explorers. So I had the pleasure to be talking to both of them today to find out some behind the scenes details on their exclusive operation at this remote part of the globe. So they're local experts and remoters, part of our community. Welcome aboard, Claire and Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alice.
So guys, I'm gonna start asking, I think the first thing that comes up to anyone's mind is, what brought you guys to the Guianas? I know, Tony, it's Aussie, so it's our Crocodile Dundee, directly from Australia, and Claire has lots to add to her own story, but what brought you guys to the Guianas?
Yeah, so Alice, back in 1988, I was just backpacking and living in London at the time, and I applied for a position as a staff member on an expedition with Operation Raleigh. I did the interview, and in the interview they were talking amongst themselves saying, well, I think he'd be suitable for Guyana. So I accepted. I had no idea where it was, didn't even know what continent it was. I didn't want to embarrass myself. So I got home that night, got the atlas out, and found out I was off to South America. So I went down to Guyana, and I thought, if I don't know where it is, that's going to be exotic enough for me. And I got to Guyana to find a really untouched, remote and raw country, perfect for adventure. So I spent 4 months there on expedition as a project leader, leading young people. I then went back a couple of years later, just backpacking in South America. There was only 2 things I had scheduled to do. The rest of it was going to just happen. One was to be in Rio for Carnival, and then later on to be in Guyana to watch Australia play the West Indies in cricket. And when I was there, I ran into someone I've met on my first trip. And they said, we've just opened a little jungle lodge and we need a manager. Do you want to stay and do it for 6 months? And I said, why not? So I stayed for 6 months, ended up becoming 3 years working for them. And in the process, I realized maybe I could start my own business. So in '94, started Wilderness Explorers. So that's sort of how I ended up there. It was mostly by accident and just opportunities arising, and 1, recognizing opportunity, and 2, being brave enough to take it. So in retrospect, sometimes I think, well, that could have really gone wrong, but here we are 30 odd years later, and it's worked out okay.
And how did you convince Lady Claire to join the adventure? Or you need to be convinced?
She can tell you her story.
So Lady Claire met Tony in Brazil many years ago at a travel conference, and I was fascinated by an Australian who was promoting Guyana. At the time, I was working for the Latin American Travel Association, and I know many people in the remote community from my work there. And I would meet Tony at occasional shows and hear more and more about this intriguing destination. So I suggested to him that maybe I work with him to try and get more UK visitors to come to Guyana. And that was back in 2003. And since then, I've gone to Guyana many times. I've even updated the BRAC Guide to Guyana as well. I'm very proud of the work we've done in the UK and globally in promoting the destination and forging fantastic relationships with communities and our different suppliers in Guyana. So it's been a wild journey, and I'm really enjoying still promoting not only Guyana, but Suriname and French Guiana. And we also do some work in the Caribbean as well to complement those tours.
Wonderful. So now that we have already Tony's confession that even he has to look at the map, I can feel I can feel free, and on behalf of the community, ask you guys to educate us a little bit and tell us the rough facts and differences between Guyana, Suriname, the French Guiana, Trinidad and Tobago. What are the main differences?
Yeah, so many people have no idea where Guyana is, or if they think they do know where it is, they think it's in Africa. I guess it sounds like Ghana. But the Guyana is on the northeast shoulder of South America. So if you're going along the top of South America, you've got Colombia, Venezuela, then you've got Guyana, Suriname, French Guiana, and then Brazil is sort of to the side and underneath. And so they sit atop of Brazil. And in fact, a number of the rivers flow into the Amazon. So we actually form part of the Amazon basin. So geographically, it's known as the Guiana Shield, which is made up of Guyana, Suriname, French Guiana, parts of northern Brazil, large parts of Venezuela, and a little bit of Colombia. So geographically, 2 million square kilometer area. It's one of the oldest formations in the world. So that the mountains in this area is not as high as the Andes because they're much older and therefore smaller because they've been worn down. It is a unique ecosystem, and there's species that are separate and different from what you get in the Amazon. Of course, we have common species, but there are some that are unique to our area as well. The difference geographically is very small between the countries. What the difference really is more in the ethnic makeup. So this area of South America was fought over by the French, Dutch, and English. Already, South America was predominantly Portuguese and, of course, Spanish. So this little corner of the world was fought over, very rich for agriculture. So sugar at that time was one of the most wealthiest commodities you could get. So Guyana, Suriname, French Guiana, they started growing sugar cane. And to do that, they needed a lot of manpower. And that's where the terrible slave trade got involved. And so hundreds of thousands of Africans were brought out as slaves to work the sugarcane fields. When eventually emancipation came, they still needed labor, so then it changed to indentured laborers, and they came from predominantly from India, also Portugal, China. So Guyana's ethnic makeup is about 51% is originally from India, about 42% from Africa. Then you have small percentages of Portuguese, Chinese, but also then the indigenous people. We have 9 different tribes in Guyana. Suriname, similar as well, apart from they also have people from Java because of the Dutch connection with Indonesia. So they have indigenous people as well. They have 8 different tribes there. And then in French Guiana, quite similar as well. A lot of people from Africa, Amerindian people as well. So culturally very different, speaking 3 different languages. And French Guiana in fact is not even a country, it's an overseas department of France. So when you're in French Guiana, you're actually in the European Union. They use the euro. So it's, it's very, very quirky. So if you cross a river, it takes 5 minutes by boat from Suriname with the dusty, chaotic South American markets. 5-minute boat trip, it's like you've crossed an ocean. There's a gendarme to meet you there, to stamp you in, perfectly sealed European-made roads. You've got your Evian water and your baguettes and your red wine. It's a complete contrast. So each of the countries has something really unique and special. Endless rainforest, indigenous communities, and along the coast, the ethnic makeup is completely different from the rest of Latin America. So that's what makes them a little bit different from other countries in Latin America. It makes them appealing because of this different ethnic makeup and also the tiny populations. So Guyana is the size of Great Britain with only 750,000 people, and 90% of them live along the coast. So the interior of the country is mainly just rainforest and wildlife. Suriname slightly smaller in size and only 500,000 people. So they're very small countries in terms of population, quite large compared to the Caribbean neighbors. Yes, of course, quite small compared to countries like Brazil. And then our Caribbean product is islands like Trinidad and Tobago, Dominica, St. Lucia, Grenada. We're not doing beach holidays, we're doing more active wildlife adventure, keeping sort of matching the type of travel that we do in the Guianas.
Wow, there's a fabulous setup of differences, right? And a melting pot of different cultures. And how do you guys explore that variety of options, colors, everything that you just told us? I mean, I know that recently, especially throughout the pandemic, that we're now, thanks God, getting out of it. But you guys had a lot of learnings and updated your product in terms of combining the destinations, right? To make a longer one destination. So how did you guys work that out with putting up a combination with all those destinations?
Yeah, so what we found, prior to the pandemic was there was greater interest in doing a journey, not just visiting one country. And that certainly for us is like, how do we justify someone coming all the way to our part of the world? And particularly just pre-pandemic, flight shame, the Greta syndrome, people feeling guilty about taking holidays. So part of the trend was going towards perhaps taking one long haul holiday but staying longer. So we were busy creating packages that combined all three countries rather than doing just one country, doing a journey that combined the best of the three. And so just before the pandemic, our fastest growing side of our business was doing these journeys across the countries, doing multiple destinations. And I suspect once we get back out of the pandemic, and we're already seeing that now, the requests are coming through, you know, quite strongly for combining the countries again. And they fit well together in terms of, because they're so different from the rest of Latin America. I mean, a traditional trip to South America, for most people, they'd probably visit, you know, together Peru, Bolivia, Chile, maybe all in one package. So the Guianas represent, you know, something quite similar where they're easy to connect together. So each of them has, as you mentioned, something different. So each country has highlights that we look at. So for example, in Suriname, we look at the maroon culture, which were African slaves, escaped into the forest, you know, 300 or 400 years ago, isolated themselves. So their culture hasn't really evolved very much from when they came out from Africa. So that it's really a snapshot of what Africa would have been 300 or 400 years ago. So they have a unique language because the slaves came from different parts of Africa. So their language evolved from different African languages, also Dutch and English. So they have unique languages. And if they fled up one particular river system, their language is different from people who fled up another river system. So that's something unique, and you only get that in Suriname. And in Guyana, perhaps to complement that, we would do the indigenous culture, the Amerindian people. So in the two countries, very close together, common border, but two very unique cultures that you can visit. And at the same time as you're there, you're seeing great wildlife, you're immersed in the rainforest, savannas, amazing waterfalls. The tallest single drop waterfall by volume in the world's in Guyana. So you know, packaging that together and creating adventures and journeys for people to take. So we've been busy sort of building up more product we had plenty of time on our hands during the pandemic.
Awesome. So also talking about the pandemic, something common for everyone, I guess, now coming off it, we can have it a clearer perspective on the learnings that we all have, right? And I'm sure that you guys have a lot of learnings, one of them being sort of working with flexibility, right? And finding other models, working closer to tourism boards, filmmaking. I know you guys have some stories to tell. Can you share shortly your main learnings from the pandemic, please?
Yeah, well, with so many Zooms at the beginning, you know, endless meetings, we all endured those, I guess, looking for the experts to find out there was no experts left anymore, that no one could guess what was going to happen. And it kept being told to us we have to reinvent ourselves, which is not that easy. So we thought, but you know, how do we do that? You know, we have buses, so do we put the buses on routes for public transport? We thought, well, that exposes our drivers to COVID. That's not fair. Also, we'd be competing with people who drive buses for the public every day. We'd be competing with them for business. So we said, well, that's just not fair on anyone. Eventually, we started looking at funding. So we ended up with 3 different sets of funding where we were able to deliver training predominantly to Indigenous communities about how to reopen safely around COVID. So we went into communities, trained them. There was 3 days worth of training around protocols, how to operate safely. So that was really a worthwhile project. Our visitors that are coming now, we're getting scores of 5 out of 5 for Guyana as a destination in terms of the protocols around COVID. They're feeling very safe traveling because these communities are taking it very seriously. The other thing we were lucky to get 2 large National Geographic film shoots, and that kept us incredibly busy. One was a month-long trip to take some climbers to do a first ascent of Tepui, which is a tabletop mountain next to Roraima. That was a 1-month-long journey. We had something like 70+ Indigenous people from the community there supporting the crew, getting them through the rainforest. And then we end up with a whole series of Primal Survivor for National Geographic. Normally you get 1 episode. Because of the pandemic, they came to Guyana, did the whole series. And that was incredibly exciting because normally we're just being a fixer. This time we were actually involved in writing the storylines, creating the, very involved in the production far more than we normally would be. So they were
sounds fun.
Some great lessons to learn about, taking your skill set and finding other ways to utilize it. And that got us through to now when we're starting to see business coming back. But that film production work is, even today I just had a call with people wanting to come down. So that'll become another part of our business now, which we always had, but perhaps less structured than what we have it as now.
And doing that film production work meant that we actually met new communities who now want to open their doors to tourism. They see a benefit for their own community as well. So it really did help. The legacy of the filming is that we are now talking to many other people that we didn't know before, and working with the local tourism board to help get them started as well, so that we've got more interesting journeys to share with people.
Awesome. So yes, guys, talking about the local communities, I would like to ask you guys to share a bit more with our community on our common pillar, actually, which is the positive impact and working with local communities. And most of remoters already do so, or are trying to extend their impact and their partnership with the local communities. But I know you guys have a depth branch on working with local communities. I read it even on your website, community-led and owned tourism. So I like it very much. It even became part of your mission statement. So can you please share a bit more of the work that you guys develop with the local communities there?
Yeah, so our mission statement, which we wrote when we developed the company and established it in 1994, was very much around helping communities. We saw that as the ideals of ecotourism, where you should bring in benefits, look after the environment, but look after the people as well. So that's always been a core aspect of our business. So we've been working with Indigenous communities really since the very beginning. So we've worked closely with a number of communities that now have award-winning products. They're recognized globally for their work with lodges that are sustainable. And the important thing is in Guyana is our model is community-led and owned tourism. So that means the community owns it. It's not a family in the community. It's owned by the village itself. And all the profits from that go back into the community. So, for example, the village of Suriname, which was the first one to ever build a lodge, the profits from it, they built themselves a village airstrip, they bought a village truck, a village bus, they put 3 people through university, and they're now doctors and back in the community. So tourism is really benefiting these communities. So a village like Suriname now, they estimate about 60% of their village economy is based on tourism, be that direct employment or indirect, as in the farmers providing their produce to the lodge. The other benefit, which is perhaps not always seen, is how it protects the environment. A lot of the people who were guides and working the lodges before were hunting animals for the wildlife trade or logging or going off gold mining. Now they have an opportunity to earn an income in their community and protect their environment. So you're seeing a lot of grassroots-led conservation in these communities where they're conserving their environment and they can earn income out of it. So that's been important for the communities. It's important for Guyana's product in particular. It's one of the core pillars of the tourism there, and the tourist board as well is really pushing with communities to help them develop products. So part of our staff are going out with the tourist board constantly into communities, looking at what they have and seeing whether the product is suitable to bring to market and how we help them do that. So that's become an important part of what we do as a destination management company.
And what has always been lovely for me when I first went to Guyana was to go to this village of Suriname and meet the school children there, and very much because we all speak English, it's easy to communicate even with tiny people in the villages and be a part of a social history lesson where we're talking to school children about where we come from and so on. It's a very heartwarming, genuine experience. And one of my favourite memories of being in Suriname is we suddenly all left the classroom and went outside the whole school and were doing the hokey cokey dance around and going back then year after year and, you know, having these strong friendships and relationships with people and seeing the people of Suriname now teaching other communities on what to do. So it's been a great waterfall effect of training throughout the indigenous communities there.
Amazing, guys. So this week, talking about communities and all the niches and diversity, Claire, this week was our week, right? We all celebrated the International Women's Day. So congrats again. I thought it was quite interesting from your portfolio that you guys are marketing a travel with women in Guyana. It's a tour. Can you please share a bit more on the behind the scenes idea of that?
Certainly. Well, we launched the tour, which unfortunately we then had to postpone because of the pandemic, but we launched a women's only tour to coincide with traveling in Guyana on International Women's Day. And the concept behind the tour is we very often get single female travelers inquiring about joining a small group departure and wanting to travel with a group and also to have a female guide, which is a really important aspect of this particular tour. And we designed the tour visiting the normal key locations that we go to, but also arranging then to have some of the very strong women in those different locations meet the group and share stories and brainstorm and talk about what it's like to be a woman living in Guyana and what it's like to be a female traveller coming to Guyana. So it was a very exciting content, and we got a lot of very good interest from both tour operators and journalists. Unfortunately, it didn't happen this year, but we'll definitely be rolling it out and, you know, offering this tour in the future. Just because it's just a nice way to have a theme of people traveling together and meeting, actually sitting down and meeting key players in conservation within Guyana. We're looking forward to getting that first tour up and running.
Cool. Yes, I thought that was quite a nice, even a benchmarking to our community, right? So other local experts, remoters, in terms of marketing specific tours, like themed tours, right? You also have Enchanted Guyana in the footsteps of Gordon Ramsay, which I thought was quite creative. And can you also explain a bit how does it work? Is it a partnership? How do you guys put it up, that idea?
Yeah, so Gordon Ramsay came to Guyana in February 2020, so just prior to the pandemic, and he did a trip, and it was shown on National Geographic. So he came into Guyana, and then with a local chef, he started learning about the food. Then he flew into one of our remote communities at Rewa, and it was about obviously the local culture and him adapting their food and cooking it in a different way, you know, from the traditional way they did it. It was a really nice production. Gordon, who's normally the star of the show, was upstaged by one of the local indigenous guides who, you know, made him look a bit foolish at times. It was great. And we thought, you know, Guyana doesn't get a lot of TV time, doesn't get a lot of publicity. People don't know where it is. How could we leverage this? So we thought we would create a tour. So Delvin, who's the local chef that traveled with Gordon, he's the tour guide on this particular trip. So you're retracing his steps in Guyana to all the places he visited. You'll be cooking the same sort of food that Gordon did on the trip. So it's based around the idea that you can do the same trip as Gordon with the person he was working with in country, and tying in the indigenous culture, the unique cuisine, a bit of adventure. So that's where the idea came from. Again, got some good publicity, people interested. Of course, COVID has impacted it again. So I think, I hope everyone in the community is also experiencing an uptake now that we're quite busy again at the moment with inquiries. So I'm hopeful that these tours now, finally, we can actually sell them instead of just talking about them.
The culinary tours have become a really important part of what we do in Georgetown as well. And back in the day, we would have clients arrive in the capital, just spend a night there and then go into the interior. But now we find that people want to stay in Georgetown very much to do some of the lovely activities, which can be rum tasting or going on a 7 curry tour. 7 curries is a Guyanese national banquet for celebrations. So this has become a really important part of our tourism. And only today, just before this conversation, I was talking with the editor of Food and Travel magazine, who's really picked up, and partly because of Gordon Ramsay's programme, you know, what wonderful different culinary experiences we have to offer in the country. So having the endorsement of somebody as well known as him has led a ripple effect through to different publications and interests. So and it's making me hungry just thinking about it.
Exactly. We all love food at the end, right? Travel is just an excuse to eat different food.
Yeah, and it's increasingly becoming important. And you know, even whilst you're on tour in some of the lodges, they're cooking things that you wouldn't normally see. So opportunities to understand the culture through the food as well. And even people wanting to see where it comes from. So developing products where you go with an indigenous person out to their farm. So their farm tends to be outside the village. You know, go out with them, see how they grow their crops, pick some of it, come back to their house, prepare a local meal. So very much an immersion in the culture. So these sort of aspects, you know, more and more people are wanting this, you know, experience rather than just taking a holiday and being an observer. They actually want to be part of it, and we're seeing a shift to that style. And also it involves more people in the community, so the benefits spread, you know, even deeper into these communities, which is you know, a positive impact for them.
Absolutely. So talking about positive impact, it doesn't stop there, does it? Can I share with the community some latest news on your guys' foundation, setting up a foundation, which is about to happen soon? Yeah,
so another part of you know, COVID was we had a bit of time and we were getting these funding, and we were advised, I said, you know, why don't you create a vehicle to do more things? So we're in the process of setting up, we're just waiting for the final legal documents to be done to set up a foundation. And it will be looking for funding primarily to do things within sort of tourism sphere, going into communities, perhaps training them, you know, looking at what they need to get involved and become self-sufficient as a tourism product. So that's pretty exciting. It's a whole new area for us. It goes hand in hand with a lot of what we've been doing in a less formal way. It's going to be more structured, and it'll also mean that we can attract funding rather than just sort of coming out of our pockets. We can actually go out and look for funding and do much larger, more worthwhile projects. So that's a really you know, exciting development for us. And you know, I think a lot of our travellers would welcome the opportunity to give something back even after they leave, but we've never really had the vehicle to do that. So that's what this will be. It'll be an opportunity for travellers to give something back to the country after they left, and for us to go out and find funding to bring in, you know, meaningful training and opportunities for communities.
Amazing, guys. We're very proud to have you at our community, to call you guys yours as well, right? And ours, and from our community, which actually all the remoters have the common sense of creating positive impact. So I'm very proud. Congratulations for all the work. And do you have any message to share to other remoters? Are you guys feeling welcome? Feeling the power of belonging and getting stronger together at our community?
I'd like to answer first and say I so enjoyed the remote virtual show that I did last year when we had just joined the community, because you know, we were all a bit nervous with how do we handle all these sales calls online, but it has just been such a very heartwarming conversation with many people, not only with yourself within remote, but different people that we know within the industry who all recommended that we join remote, because we can all have these wonderful conversations. And hopefully we can continue this conversation maybe in Argentina later this year. I mean, Tony and I are really hoping that we can come down, because we've all known each other for a long time, and you know, we need to pull together and brainstorm and show that we got through, hopefully, this pandemic, and we're growing and doing other things. And I'm hoping that everybody else is feeling the same buzz that we're feeling at the moment.
Yeah. So as wonderful as it's been to do virtual trade shows and meetings, you know, we're absolutely looking forward to, you know, face-to-face trade shows again and meetings. And it is our aim, hopefully, to get to Argentina later this year and meet people and sit and talk with them, and not just have to do it through a screen. So,
yeah.
And I hope everyone is seeing like us, and I'm sure they are. Just finally, we seem to be getting inquiries through, and there's another level of hope, and it seems like that light at the end of the tunnel is no longer an oncoming train. It actually is the end of the tunnel, and we're coming out to the other side. So, yeah, we feel optimistic. We're looking forward to getting back to seeing people and being able to share the unique experiences that we can offer in our part of the world.
Amazing, guys. So we're very proud to have you guys part of the community. I thank you so much for your time. Thank you for educating us a bit more on this remote part of the planet. And yes, thank you so much for being part. So if anyone wants any local expert, so you can reach out to Claire. Thank you, guys. Talk to you soon.
Right.
Lovely.
Thanks, Alice.
Thank you, Alice.